Hello everyone, my name is Ravikran Govekar. I work as Chief Conservator of Forest and Field Director, Pench Tiger Reserve. I stay at Nagpur. I welcome you in my session. Please bear with me for another maybe 30 minutes or so. I will be discussing on this wildlife management and the role of ecotourism with the focus on the state of Maharashtra especially. I will not take a pan-India view, but I will mostly focus on Maharashtra. On the backdrop of the ongoing COVID-19 and stressful situation, so I have tried not to make my presentation very stressful. I have put lots of pictures in that and very minimum amount of text. So please bear with me. You may be aware that Maharashtra is one of the most progressive states in India. It is a central Indian state, very diverse state, having coastal part and having the interior dry deciduous forest area. So we'll be focusing basically the general wildlife management, general wildlife conservation, general scenario of wildlife diversity in Maharashtra, protected area system. Then we'll go to the focus area of tiger conservation in Maharashtra, and then we will try to correlate this ecotourism and wildlife conservation. So let us go to the first slide. The topic is wildlife conservation and ecotourism in Maharashtra. This is Maharashtra. You can see here the 6 red circles which indicate the 6 tiger reserves, and there are so many other green spots. So all these green spots indicate different sanctuaries and national parks. So if you can count here, 60 is given, but there are 61 sanctuaries and national parks and conservation reserves. So till 2018, till the Ghodazari sanctuary was notified, Maharashtra had 61 protected areas. As you are aware that national park, sanctuary and conservation reserve and community reserves, these are called as the protected areas, and they got certain special protection under the Wildlife Protection Act. So if you can pictorial way, if you want to display these things, then I can show you that Vidarbha is known for tiger and of course wild buffalo. Then the southern part of Maharashtra, southern western part of Maharashtra like Kolhapur and Ratnagiri and Sindhudurg, it is known for elephant, which is a very recent development in last almost 10 years or so. Then we got important birds like JIB, then we got visiting flamingos and so many other animals in Maharashtra. So we'll be discussing this diversity, wildlife diversity in Maharashtra. Maharashtra is really a diverse state. Over 9,400 square kilometer of area is under the protected area. There, I just told you that there are 61 protected areas, and 3% of the total land area of the state has been covered under this protected area network, that is national parks, sanctuaries, community reserve and conservation reserves. So we got a Malvan sanctuary that is at the sea level, and we got the Harishchandragarh Kasubai sanctuary. So our PAs range from 0 meter above sea level and go up to 1600 meter from the mean sea level. The first PA in Maharashtra was notified in 1955, which is Tadoba, and last one was notified is Ghodazari sanctuary in 2018. In last 10 years, more than 19 protected areas were notified in Maharashtra, notified by the government of Maharashtra, and this is the highest number in the state. No other state in the country, no other state has notified so many PAs in last 10 years. We got PS for tigers, we got PS for wild buffalo, we got PS for flamingo, we got PS for great Indian bustard, JIBs. Then we try to conserve our corals, we try to conserve our forest, we try to conserve our ancient history, rock paintings, forts, culture, local culture. Then we got the religious abode like Bhima Shankar is abode of Lord Shiva. Then we got famous shikar blocks like Tadoba, like Pench and many other places. Then we got a place called as Lonar. Lonar is now sanctuary, and that has a celestial origin. Everybody know it is a crater, celestial origin, and it is And then we got lots of water bodies like Jayakwadi, Isapur, so many water bodies are, these are the man-made structures and they were converted into the protected areas. We got a unique distinction of having a national park like Sanjay Gandhi National Park within the heart of the metropolitan city like Mumbai, where the density of population is 20,000. Sanjay Gandhi National Park or Flamingo Sanctuary, Thane Creek Sanctuary. And we got the sanctuaries like Bhamragad, Chaprala, Pranhita, Kolamarka Reserve in Gadchiroli, where the density of population, human population, is just about 74. So these two extremes. We got habitats ranging from semi-evergreen in the southern western part of Maharashtra, Western Ghat part of Maharashtra, to dry deciduous in Vidarbha region, to grassland in the Marathwada region, central Maharashtra region. Maharashtra got 6 tiger reserves. This is the highest number of tiger reserves. There are 50 tiger reserves, in India. Out of this 50, Maharashtra got 6. The only other state having these 6 tiger reserves is Madhya Pradesh. Maharashtra is one among the 3 states having the population of the very, very endangered wild buffalo. It is probably as endangered as our tiger, Royal Bengal tiger. Tadoba, Pench, Melghat, these are the famous, very popular tiger destination, tiger tourism points, and in recent years people favor this area like anything. Then this is the state having national park in the vicinity of 3 metropolitan cities, Mumbai, Navi Mumbai and Thane Municipal Corporation. Our habitat diversity, it ranges from the mangrove to the semi-evergreen forest, to grasslands, to deciduous forest, dry deciduous forest, evergreen forest, moist deciduous forest, scrubland and everything. Then in this entire area we got a huge species diversity, genetic diversity, and of course the habitat diversity. We got elephants, we got flamingo, we got forest owlet and corals and turtles. All these habitats, all these species and gene pool is being conserved very efficiently and effectively in Maharashtra because of this typical nature. This is, you can see, this is Sanjay Gandhi National Park and Thane Creek Sanctuary, and it is very, very close to human habitation, very high density human habitation. This is wild buffalo of Kolamarka Conservation Reserve in Gadchiroli, very rare species. This is picturesque view of Harishchandragarh Kalsubai Sanctuary, which is having altitude of around 1600 meters above mean sea level. Wild dogs, famous wild dogs of central India. If you go to Tadoba or Pench or Navega or Nagsira or anywhere in Vidarbha part, you will definitely get to see these wild buffaloes. This is the Lonar Sanctuary, which has the history of 56,000 years, which was recently notified as sanctuary. So this was the broad overview of the wildlife scenario in Maharashtra. So we don't have much time, very limited time is there. So now I will just focus on one aspect of this conservation, that is the tiger conservation. There are many other sanctuaries, many other areas, right from turtles in Ratnagiri and Dahanu, and GIB in western Maharashtra, elephants in south western Maharashtra. So many places we got different issues and different areas. But because of paucity of time, I will just focus on the tiger conservation in Maharashtra, and then we'll go ahead with the ecotourism part. So we often come across the people who are, why tiger? Why only tiger? Why tiger is so popular? Why do you want to save tiger? Why not other animals? So the ecologist and wildlife biologists think that if tiger is conserved, then probably because of its conservation, the habitats of all other species which are otherwise not very well-known species, not charismatic species, it is also conserved. So that is called as umbrella concept. The umbrella, tiger umbrella, safeguards rest of the biodiversity. Maybe other animals, their habitat, even your drainage, water, soil and everything. So this umbrella species concept is very, very important in terms of tiger conservation, and in India we focus on this umbrella species conservation, this one philosophy, and we try to manage the habitat of tiger in such a way that it is not only tiger but rest of the animals, herbivores, other carnivores, manner animals, vegetation, and everything is conserved. Then there is another concept. Tiger is also called as a keystone species. There are many keystone species in nature. So tiger is one of the keystone species. Keystone is an important stone in these buildings. You might have seen these arches. So that if that keystone is not there, then that arch is not stable. If you remove that keystone, that arch will, or that building will fall down. So everybody knows that tiger is a top predator, and it occupies the top position in the food pyramid. So its position is very important, and that's why we try to safeguard its habitat, we try to protect its habitat, protect the tiger, conserve the tiger as a keystone species, so that rest of the ecological balance is ensured, rest of the food pyramid and other activities, they are ensured. So for tiger conservation, the generally agreed principle of conservation is protected area based conservation or tiger reserve based conservation. So in 1972 the project tiger was launched by Government of India, and it was as a policy matter it was decided that we will have a tiger reserves which are having core area where only wildlife or mainly wildlife will stay, and it is surrounded by the buffer area where there is a coexistence of the human being as well as tiger. So this is the picture, this is the map showing Tadoba. If you see the red, white portion, this indicates the core area. There are probably no villages, or we try to make it inviolate. Only animal, only tiger and its prey base and other animals will stay there. But the surrounding area is the buffer area where both human being, their villages, their activities, they will be there along with the tigers and other animals. This is the coexistence area. And if you see this map, these are the connecting roads between two tiger reserves. These are called as corridors. Tiger require corridors. Tiger wants to move from one place to other place, and if that corridor is not there, there is obstruction to the free flow of the gene in tigers. So we need to maintain these corridors as well. So we try to identify, conserve, and protect and safeguard these corridors which connect two tiger reserves, two or more tiger reserves. So this is typical structure of tiger landscape, and there are tigers in the areas outside this core and buffer. There are many other areas just like that forest area. They are neither sanctuary nor national park nor tiger reserves, but there are tigers. More than 40% of the tigers, they stay outside protected area in Maharashtra. And these are the habitats where we get tiger. This is Sahyadri landscape. This is the Gadchiroli Chandrapur landscape, Yavatmal Tipeshwar landscape, and we got Melghat, we got other areas in Vidarbha. So these are the typical areas where we harbor the tiger, and because of tiger, this area is also safeguarded, and because of this habitat, our tigers, they have been safeguarded. So tiger is not safe. We try to make it safe, but there are always the threats of different things on tiger. Threats of poaching, threats of habitat loss. This is the picture from Tadoba landscape. These are the mining areas from Sahyadri. They are thermal power project near Chandrapur. So these are the areas which are there within the vicinity of the protected area or in the buffer corridor area or that landscape, which often affect the free movement of the tiger. Then forest fire, because you know tiger requires very healthy and good habitat. So forest fire sometimes devastate or destroy entire tiger habitat within no time, and this kind of threat is also very significant in tiger bearing areas in Vidarbha part especially. Then we got problems of scrub cattle or cattle grazing inside. They not only deplete the forage for the prey base of the tiger, but they sometimes carry the diseases and they spread the diseases to wild animals. Then that firewood collection, then people enter the forest for non-timber forest produce collection like mahua or tendupatta. They have to go because that is their livelihood, they have to go. But if it is legally done, it is done under certain system of practice, under the supervision of forest department, there is no issue. But if it is illegally done or it is done in the area which is not allowed, then that definitely hampers that or affects that habitat. Then there is a big threat of poaching. Organized poachers like Bahelia, Babaria, Pardi, this used to visit Maharashtra and used to poach the tigers, but in recent time we tried to control these organized gangs. Now there are kind of local poaching and all, but this was the big threat to tiger. People used to come, and there was a transnational, international trade of tiger body parts. So that is one of the threats. Then there is threat of electrocution. People electrocute the animals, people electrocute the wild pig or other herbivores to safeguard their crops etc. But in that process sometimes tiger is killed, and this is one of the big threats. Poisoning or electrocution is one of the threats for tiger. Then the linear developments like roads and railways and canals, these are also the threats where tigers get hit by the vehicle or tiger fall in the canal water. And of course 11 kV line, electricity line, they are also the threats for tiger. So there are many other small threats I will not discuss in detail. Now we will just come across the important thing, that how we are managing these areas, how we are overcoming the threats, what are the different things based on which we are working in the forest, what are different strategies that we are following. So you can see here there are 4-5 different strategies that we follow. The first one is the policy level decisions. We declare certain areas as tiger reserves, core area, buffer area, sanctuary, national park. Then we got certain policy like goes, no go, development, no development kind of thing. So we try to do this and try to safeguard the area. So once it is notified, then that area is much more protected and safer than the rest of the areas. So this is called as a policy decisions or policy method. Then once this tiger reserve is notified, then we manage that area very actively. We go for habitat development, we provide them water, we do the soil and moisture conservation work, we do active protection. We manage the habitat so that there will be prey base, then that habitat in perpetuity, so that tiger will also sustain, tiger will also grow in perpetuity. So this is scientific and systematic management that we do for the areas like PAs or outside PAs as well as the corridors. This is the second strategy that we follow. Then we got a law. We try to protect our area through law. We try to arrest the people. We take them to the courts. We take a strict measures against these illegal activities, illegal poaching, and through that we try to control the depletion of the wildlife like tiger and prey of the tiger. Then protection of the wildlife or protection of tiger is not a job of government alone. Forest department can't do that. So we follow this participatory method. Joint forest management, eco development is called. That's we involve people, we involve civil society, we involve the local people, local stakeholders, because they are most affected people. So we try to mitigate certain things, we try to provide them livelihood, we try to reduce their dependence of the wildlife habitat, and we try to allow them to join for a department for the better management. That is called as participatory method. Then the visitors, they come to the area, the students come to the area, we take the students of the school, these are the young ambassador for the conservation. So we involve the students and general public in conservation. That is called a sensitization method. We try to create the new ambassadors who will speak in favor of the wildlife conservation, will sensitize their families and their villages and their friends, and will try to minimize the negative pressures, and they will be the goodwill ambassadors for the conservation, for conservation education. Then we use lots of technology like electronic eye, camera trapping, satellite collar or VHF collars. There are so many other techniques, DNA technology, different Android apps that we follow, and we use this technology and research very effectively in tiger conservation to identify the areas, their corridors, their connectivity, their threats, diseases and everything. And lastly, we try to get the support to our area through ecotourism that we'll be discussing later on. So ecotourism is also important aspect of conservation, and through ecotourism people visit these wilderness areas, wildlife areas, lots of money come in, and that money is being utilized for conservation and habitat development and other activities. So ecotourism is directly related to the conservation. Then we got corporate social responsibility, support by the corporate, support by the NGOs, support by the civil society people. We got Tiger Conservation Foundation, and money donated, money given or money earned through that is utilized for the tiger conservation. These are the broad strategies or broad areas through which we try to conserve the tiger. So this is the protection, this is our anti-poaching squads or special tiger protection force. They camp, they walk, they do the Android-based patrolling called as M-Stripe. There are lots of conflicts happening everywhere. So this forces, the local staff, they go and they stay in the deeper part of forest and try to safeguard that area, protect the area. These are the kind of poachers that we nab, and then we see that they are prosecuted and they don't indulge in these activities again. Then this is, I talked about the habitat intervention, because tigers require good prey base, that is chital, sambar, wild pig, nilgai and other prey base, and that prey is herbivore, and herbivore needs to be given a proper forage, and if you don't manage that area, then lots of weed or unpalatable species will come up, and we have to manage those area for this habitat intervention, like weed management, water management, providing water during summer time, soil moisture conservation works. So many activities are there. You have to create so many other structures here and there for managing the behavioral needs of the various animals. So that we do under this habitat intervention. In buffer area, especially near villages, sometimes these animals, there is conflict, negative interaction between human being and the people, human being and the animals, and there is loss to the lives, there is crop damage, there is the cattle kill, cattle depredation, and because of that lots of negative interactions are there, and this kind of situation is tackled or handled by our staff, of course with help of the local people. Then I spoke about the eco development or minimizing or reducing the dependence of people on the forest. So we try to involve the people, we try to give them employment, we try to train them, maybe it is sewing machine or driving or hotel management related activities, bengal making, or so many activities are there. We keep sending the unemployed youth, we train them and keep giving them kind of employment, so that they will not go to the forest, they will become self-reliant, self-dependent, their livelihood needs are taken care of, and of course that will help us in long term. So this is the eco development, and lots of different schemes of Government of India, Government of Maharashtra, different bodies like UNDP, etc. They also support us in these activities. Conservation education is important thing. I spoke about that. We call the students of different schools, especially Jilla Parishad school and schools in adjoining areas, villages, and we try to make them a goodwill ambassador for the tiger conservation. We involve journalists, we involve other people, we involve specially able students as well. Now the third and last part of my presentation is ecotourism and conservation. I just spoke about the PAs and other areas. So ecotourism, visiting those areas which are important for wilderness, we call this as ecotourism. It is unlike normal tourism, it is a kind of responsible tourism. It talks about nature, it talks about responsibility, it talks about conservation. So ecotourism is the responsible travel to natural areas that conserve the environment and improve the well-being of the local people. And if you can see in this diagram, this conservation, education and livelihood, these are the three integral part of any typical ecotourism. There should be conservation, there must be some conservation education, and of course local people must get something out of that, that is livelihood generation. And once people start getting some money out of wildlife conservation, then they own up that area, then they own up that species, then they own up that particular activity, and then there is community ownership, stakeholders ownership, and that area then got a very good future, and this animal also got very good protection in that area. So some of the important objectives of this wildlife tourism or ecotourism is that we need to highlight the heritage value of the wilderness in that area. We need to highlight why this particular protected area is important for, what are the local values which are important for the visitors and what are to be conserved. Then we need to build awareness and respect for the environment and of course culture and ecology. then we should ensure that through ecotourism there is a livelihood opportunity for the local stakeholders, local communities, local people, and there is of course benefit sharing of the resources. I spoke about the Tiger Conservation Foundation, that money coming as a gate money which is distributed amongst the people, so it is kind of benefit sharing. Then using ecologically sustainable local material, it is a green technology, local material, low cost material that we say. So without creating a kind of bad picture or a very big concrete building, we can have a small hut, have a small building having local material kind of thing. So we try to utilize the local material. And of course wilderness conservation in ecologically sensitive landscape is one of the important objectives of the ecotourism, because when there is wilderness, that has to be conserved, and if it has to be conserved, then the local people, they have to be roped in, they have to be taken on board. So these are some of the objectives of the ecotourism. In Maharashtra, we are following very good practices, best practices, and we got our own ecotourism policy. We got so many other guidelines. Then we got kind of go zone and no go zone area in areas like Tadoba. Then we got something called as community nature conservancy, which is unique in India, where people don't cultivate in their agricultural land, but they allow that area to be used as wildlife habitat, used by the wildlife, and that area, tourism is promoted in that area, and whatever money that they get, that is distributed amongst the community. So there are it serves two purposes. There is huge crop losses in that area because of wildlife presence. So since they are not cultivating, the natural vegetation will come up, and there is no loss as such, cattle loss or agricultural loss, so there is no loss. Then since animals are harboring that area, that becomes important wildlife habitat, and since tourism is there, tourists visit that area, there is a flow of money, so community is getting benefited, when whereas animals are also getting benefited. Something called CNC. There are a couple of places in Vidarbha where the CNC is going on, like Tadoba landscape and Umred Pawni Karandala sanctuary. Then ecotourism proceeds used for welfare of local people, wildlife habitat conservation. The entire money is flowed back. It is given to the Tiger Conservation Foundation and is utilized for the community welfare. And we don't focus only on tiger. There are lots of other, especially if you go to Melghat, for example, there are lots of boating and kayaking and paragliding or maybe trekking. So many other activities are there which we promote. Zip line is there in like in Gondia kind of thing. Then there is one important activity that we have recently started, that is called Nisarga Anubhav, where the local kids, local school children, they are brought in to the PA, and they are free of cost. They are given some lessons, some learnings regarding wildlife, and they are sensitized about the conservation at that age. And once at that initial age they get sensitized, that remains till they become adult. So we are trying to promote this Nisarga Anubhav or nature sensitization, experiencing the nature for the villagers as well as the school kids. And of course we try to promote the environment friendly measures and practices. We try to regulate the ecotourism for better conservation. That is, we try for minimize the human imprinting, minimize the carbon footprints, and promote cleanliness. There should not be any dirt in these wilderness areas. We try to make it environment friendly. Then we strictly follow the carrying capacity of the area. We do not promote the vehicles or number of people beyond carrying capacity. Then we got a close and open period. Monsoon time we don't open that area, and we allow that nature to rejuvenate. Then benefit sharing is usually done, and dependence of villagers is reduced for that wilderness area, and we try to inculcate the ownership for the diversity. And of course there is capacity building of local people, including guides for the better conservation. So these are some of the tourism structures that we have developed. These are the facilities at different centers, transport facility, sensitization facility, then interpretation facility, and stay facilities. So many things are there. Then sometimes people do visit very historical points, historical places, rock paintings, and so many other things. Okay, so this is my last slide. So now the key question is how this ecotourism is important, or it plays a key role in conservation. I told you earlier that ecotourism promotes livelihood generation, ecotourism brings in money, ecotourism tries to utilize the local resources wilderness to generate the money. And once there is money, once there is improved livelihood, then the threats to the local diversity will minimize. People will not unnecessarily go to the forest to collect the firewood. People may not go to collect the NTPs illegally. People will try to improve their livelihood status through ecotourism, and that will definitely help conserving the biodiversity and of course wildlife. I told you that revenue generated is utilized for local communities for their welfare and beneficiary is there, so that ownership is there, and once there is ownership, there is threat is minimized. That is, this animal is mine, this diversity is mine, this forest is mine. So when that ownership is there, then that helps in conservation. And lastly, when there is wilderness, when there is tourism, then we promote it, we promote the better management of that area. And any area, it is, if it is managed systematically, scientifically, it gives rise to the better wildlife, with citing better diversity, better biodiversity. So when there is tourism, when there is visitation of the people, then we tend to manage that area extremely well, systematically and scientifically. So these are some of the important things which are related to ecotourism. So the takeaway message is ecotourism is very important tool in conservation, whereas local people, or through local people, we try to safeguard that area, we try to conserve the diversity, maybe species diversity, maybe gene diversity, maybe habitat diversity, overall diversity that way, and we try to safeguard the area through this means. So this is all about my lecture. I hope you have liked this. These are some of the wonderful landscapes in Maharashtra, some of the landscape where wilderness is there, wildlife is there, wonderful sources of water bodies, and of course when there is coexistence, when the people stay in the buffer area and other areas, then there is wonderful diversity of the plants and grains and different crops and of course different materials. So diversity is linked with the culture, culture is linked with that particular forest and habitat, and which is again linked with the wilderness and wildlife. So this is all. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.